Hello, ladies and gents, boys and girls, people of all ages, sexualities, and identities, and welcome back to another play review. Apologies if my voice is a little bit croaky at the moment, I've got a little bit of a sore throat, but I hope you're all doing well, and let's jump right into this review. Hamilton, the musical, a masterpiece based on the history of the founding fathers of America, an untold story up until this point, and of course, written and directed by the incredible Lin-Manuel Miranda. So, what is Lin's aim when he shows you this play? Essentially, his aim is to portray and to give off this sense of being the odd one out. And that is exactly what Alexander Hamilton is. As the lyrics go, a bastard orphan from the Caribbean who essentially gets taken away to America and tries to start a life for himself. Where Alex grows up, essentially there's hurricanes and he loses his family very quick to suicides and a lot of other things. And so the people of his village essentially send him off to America in hopes of a better life. But as he begins to learn and as he begins to steal and pretty much find anything he can to make him what he needs to be, he finds himself getting involved in a college, in a system of education, and essentially teaches himself to become the greatest he can be. However, America is starting to have a giant change, and revolution is on the border of exploding. It turns out that they're in an argument between them and Britain, and Alex, adding a little bit more powder to the explosion, decides that him and a bunch of young men want to make a place for themselves, especially as being minorities in America at the time and struggling to have a say. So they join on none other than George Washington, and essentially they begin the Boston Tea Party. For anyone who doesn't know what the Boston Tea Party is, essentially it's to do with tax on tea and a lot of other stuff, where essentially the Brits were taxing America for a lot of imports, and America pretty much said, come on, enough's enough, we're going to go to war. So the two sides go to war, but however, before this, Alexander meets his new wife, Eliza, after pretty much hitting on her sister, Angelica. Throughout the play, it is quite obvious that the relationship between Angelica and Hamilton goes back and forth, and they have a very strong bond, but it stays as nothing more than that, well, at least to our knowledge, and however, Eliza takes Alex's heart away, and essentially they live a very happy life. Well, that's until the war properly kicks off, however. Alex and the rest of his men go off to war. They fight in Georgetown and manage to win just by a landslide. After this, Alex and a man named Aaron Burr return back to America and start building their lives together. Aaron Burr and Alexander both go off to study law, and alongside this, he finds out about Burr's secret love affair. However, the pair of them keep it to themselves and move on with their life. Aaron Burr constantly mocks in one of the songs the British gentleman who he essentially stole his new girlfriend from, and pretty much mocks him and says, well, if he's going to be on the British side, well, I'm going to be in her bed. But that's besides the point. Alexander and Burr go off to a conference as they begin to study law, and as they become very good lawyers, they find themselves in a sticky situation in which the world is changing around them, and the pair of them have to decide what side of the horseshoe they're on. Alexander decides to take the side of the law and hopes that he will be able to change it for the better, whereas Burr decides to stand on the side and decides that it's no point getting too involved in politics as it may affect his outcome in future elections or anything else he may want to do in his career. Alexander comes to him and pretty much points out that if he doesn't choose a side, it's going to make people untrusting to him. They're not really going to go and vote for him if they don't believe he believes in the same things as them. This is very important for later on in the play. So Alexander comes up with a mission and pretty much puts himself in the room where it happens, aka Congress. Putting himself in the room where it happens, he can start dividing the banks and everything on financial gain. He can make sure it wins on his side of things and plays out favourably for him. Alexander Hamilton then goes on to write the Federalist Papers, which will be part of the Constitution, which still stands to this day. And essentially, he writes a total of 51 papers, and over a span of 6 months or so, they make 85 in a total. Alexander Hamilton, till this day, is still the longest amount of essays written in that document. Right, back to catch up to where we were. So essentially, he gets himself in the room where it happens, but after this, he ends up in a bit of a scandal, as Alexander Hamilton has an affair with a woman of the night after his wife has gone off to her father's house. He pretty much ends up in this affair by mistake when she has been pretty much put out in the street on purpose to catch any guy off guard. He does at first is offers to take her home, but after that, things lead down a dark path, and then he is blackmailed into keeping this affair secret. But the problem is with keeping that affair secret, and the problem with him trying to keep it to himself, is that Alexander Hamilton has a very big habit of writing down everything he's ever said and everything he's ever done. Skip forward, he pretty much points out to the people in Congress that even though it's not technically illegal at the time, he is in a bit of deep water with his family, and so he is pushed away into one side of the house, and to make matters worse, his wife decides to burn all the love letters. After this, eventually Alexander Hamilton goes on to have a son named Philip. Philip is an upcoming teenager and is going off to many events at his college, but he ends up in a bit of an argument with a bully who is much older than him, and the pair of them agree to a duel. After agreeing to a duel, Alexander Hamilton pretty much gives his son a bit of advice on his very first duel, after remembering a duel that happened back when Alexander Hamilton was in the trench. This duel took place way sooner in the play and essentially was between a reluctant officer and someone people considered a very big coward. Now, back forward to Philip. Philip ends up dying in the middle of Georgetown after the duel failing and the guy not shooting in the sky. For one party, of course, the duel is very successful, and Alexander now has to go home and explain to his wife exactly why his son is dead. Or dying, I should say. The doctor does everything they can, but sadly, to no avail, Philip dies. After Philip's death, Alexander takes a very long time of mourning. And to make matters worse, and even further to insult to his injury, he goes down the street and realizes Aaron Burr is going for president. Opposite Aaron Burr, you have Thomas Jefferson. Aaron Burr tries to persuade Hamilton into helping him, but Hamilton doesn't quite know where Burr's motives lie in politics, and so knowing that Thomas Jefferson is way more versed in the way of politics, he decides to give Jefferson his vote. This begins a feud between Aaron Burr and Hamilton, and the pair of them end the play with having a duel. Aaron never intended to kill him, but feels so insulted by the fact that his own best friend, as he saw it, has betrayed him, that he would not stop the duel. They both had a write-off before the duel, and then go off to the exact same spot where Philip died. Hamilton goes to the spot wearing glasses on the night of his execution, in which he looks up to the sky on purpose so that Aaron Burr will shoot him, as he believes a world where he is no longer with his son and everything else is not worth it. The play then continues on towards the end, pointing out the fact that his wife Eliza continues on his work and helps build a orphanage alongside mentioning George Washington and everyone else who fought alongside Alexander Hamilton. She tries to her best to tell his story, but of course, history has its ways of playing with what lives, what dies, and who tells your story. The play then pretty much ends with Angelica and Eliza splitting off from each other after doing all this work. And then we either see the ghost of Alexander Hamilton, or, as some interpretations have said, a version of Lin-Manuel Miranda on the play, pretty much coming forward front to Eliza just to kind of say, look, we told his story. Then she goes to center stage and screams, and it cuts out black. So, what was my thought of Hamilton as a play overall? Well, it took a very long time for me to get around to watching it, but once it did come out and it was available for lots of people to watch, I did in fact watch it, and I felt like the story and the and the characters are so memorable. The ideas and the pushed forward ambitions of each and every single character throughout the play, and their troubles and their struggles with discrimination and sexism and all that really comes across strong. On top of that, Jonathan Groff's performance as King George is immaculate. We have some very good back and forth scenes, which I should have mentioned earlier, where essentially before the Federalist Papers and during other bits, King George pretty much comes out on stage and laughs and has "What comes next? You've been freed." All those brilliant moments to tie the play together and show both sides of the angle, from Britain's side of point of view and from America's point of view, alongside Alexander Hamilton's story. The Schuyler sisters is brilliant. Every single scene they're in. George Washington's song "Live, Die, Tell Your Story" still gives me shivers to this day. It's such a strong message, and it's so true about so many stories and the way that our lives can play out. And for that reason, I give Alexander Hamilton, or Hamilton the musical, as it is, a solid 9 out of 10. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next play review. Till then, stay beautiful. Goodbye.